Hi, this is Nathan Win from Inomatic. Today I will be showing you step by step how to take a list of employees with their supervisor and turn into an organizational chart. So from this list here of 314 fictional employees and their supervisor, we should be able to derive to this pivot table where we see the highest level of manager who oversee everybody, their direct reports, and the number of employees under them. If we drill further into this is what we call level 2, we should be able to see level 3 and those who within that group. For example, if we go further down to this list, we should have the individual who has the one value here are the direct report without any employees, and those who with employees but also a direct report to this level. If we further drill in, we should be able to see the head for level 5 and the employees that are reporting to level 5 and so on. So let me quickly run the code that generate the data for that pivot table. Here I have level 1 to 6. My data does not go beyond level 6. However, if your data is that far in, you can simply insert level 7, 8, and so forth to meet your needs. I go ahead and press run here. That should be able to generate the data for the pivot table here. If I go ahead and refresh, nothing's really changed because that's the data underlined. I will go ahead and clear this and we'll walk you through the thoughts behind it, the logic and all the code, and we're gonna write all the subroutine together. And so let's get started. First, we should check the supervisors on this list and make sure they are also part of the employee list. Every single one of them should be a valid employee, and there should be only one employee who does not have a supervisor, and that is the highest level of manager there is. To do so, we're going to use the match function, match supervisor email, check against the employee list, and we would like to match exact by entering 0. If we find this email on the employee list, it should return the row number. It says found this email here in row 230. That's 230 and then match, meaning the formula works. From the lower right corner, where I get the cross, I double click, I would paste the same formula across the data list. What I'm focusing is where we cannot find a match. That is NA, and there's only one record where we have the employee who does not have a supervisor, and that can be easily be detected as level 1. Of course, we would like to do this in VBA, but that's just a concept for you to think through. So we go ahead, clear, go to the VBA code, insert a module. I rename this my code. All right, let's get started with the coding. First, we will declare a couple of public variables. Declare sh as current worksheets, employee email column, supervisor email column, level 1, last row of the data set, last column of the data set. Now that we have the public variables, we will write a function to assign value. So this function here, get public variables. This one I will call on each time I run to assign values. So first, this is the local current sheet name, all employee down here. And then I set the worksheets to that one. I assign the email column B, the supervisor column C, and the level 1 column D. Of course, in your data set, this will correspond to your data. For last row, basically, I'll take column A, look from the bottom up, find the first record, and that's the row. Same thing here with the column from the right to on first row. Whenever it finds the first values, that's the end on the column. So if we are to test it out with message box, last row equal last row, and last column equal last column. If we run this, we know that the data ends at row 115 and the column ends at number 9. It will take this whole thing all the way down, 15 cross, 9 column across. So that's how you are able to obtain the entire data set. Let's look at the logic how to acquire level 1. Level 1 is the highest level of manager who does not report to anyone. So looking at our data, if you look down, you will see one employee who does not have a supervisor. We will check our data to be sure there's only one of them. We confirm. So if we look through the list where there's data on B but no data on C, then the individual is identified as level 1. And that individual should be pasted here across the data set because everybody should be able to trace back to level 1. So let's look at the code. First, we establish the subroutine get level 1. We would then call the function so that we get the values for the variables here. To loop through the table, I use the for loop. For I row equal 2, because we start at row number 2, to last row determine when we call this get public variables, and then we would increment by 1 for each loop. We would like to obtain the email address and supervisor address each time we loop. So for employee variable employee email equal to range B2, but we don't want to hardcode any of this because it will be dynamic based on the loop. So to improve upon this, we make currencies because we would like to reference this all employees and not just any range B2. We would like this to be here. B is the column for employee emails, and we have assigned that in this variable already. We take the B off and replace with employee email column. With the 2 here, it start with 2, it go all the way to 315, I think, on each loop. So we would like to reference it dynamically with iRow values. We should be able to do the same for supervisor email, which we change this to supervisor email. Instead of column B, we change to column C. This is exceptionally helpful because if your data set is moved, you can easily go in here and update the letters accordingly. Next, we will evaluate the employee emails and supervisor email through an if statement. So I open the if, I close the if, and here's my condition. If the length of employee email is greater than 0 and the length of supervisor email equals 0, then I declare a level 1 email as string, and I will assign this level 1 email equal to the employee email. To test this out, I will put out a message box. Message box, I would like to see the row number, the email address for the employee, as well as the level 1 email. Now, when we detect the level 1 individual, we obtain the values and we must exit the for loop, because at this point we no longer need the for loop. So let's proceed with testing it. Row 62, the employee email, that matches with the level 1 because level 1 email is obtained from the value of employee email. So that should work well. However, if we go to this supervisor email on the row 62 and add a space, let's try to run the application again. We got no message box because the condition is never met. None of the email address has a length of 0. So it's counting the spaces where it shouldn't. To address that, we simply do a trim. Now, if we run that again, we should have the same result where 62 is blank for the supervisor email. At this point, we have the level 1 email address, but we must put it here in column D for the entire data set. To proceed, we comment out the message box and we set range level 1 column, which is the specified here, from D2 to the last row 315, and that entire range has a value of email 1. So if we test it out, we see that from row 2 to the last row 315 all have the same level 1 email. Let's end part 1 here. Looking forward to see you in part 2, where we proceed to get the rest of the levels. See you there.